All right, everybody. Welcome to a very special edition of the Touchline Podcast. We are joined with a very special guest. We have Rick Aaron with us. Going to talk a little bit about BYU soccer tonight. How you doing today, Rick?
Hey, fantastic, Richard. How are you? Brett, it's good to be with you guys.
It's awesome, man. Thanks for being on.
Yeah, we reached out to Rick because BYU soccer for the first time in several years since 2007. They qualified for the Open Cup this year, which is a tournament that involves all levels of soccer in North America. And if you put together a team, if Brett and I put together a team and we go through all the qualifying, we could go through this thing and win it, right?
Yep.
Maybe just me and you together, we could do it, couldn't we?
Yep. Dibs on goalie.
I'll bring the water. So this season, Real Salt Lake, they're as part of MLS, they automatically qualify. The Real Monarchs, the development team that's in USL for Real Salt Lake, they are also in the tournament, and then BYU Soccer also qualified. Rick, can you tell us a little bit about how that went down?
Yeah, guys, I really like the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. It's kind of unique in all of sporting competitions. You've got 91 teams from all over the United States and basically set up as a huge tournament to determine the best soccer team in the United States, whether they're playing at a professional level like Real Salt Lake or a lower level like the USL or even the club level. Like some of these teams are just club teams playing at the local or regional level, and they all get their shot. They all get to go in there. I can't think of another sport where this could happen. Certainly not football. You couldn't put a semi-pro team from Provo up against an NFL team or anything like that. But here, anybody's got a shot to win it. I don't even think basketball or other sports you could really pull this off, because I don't think you could pull a church league team out of West Jordan and put them up against an NBA team or even a NCAA Division I team. It would just be a complete slaughter.
That would be pretty amazing, though. Say they did like a 3-on-3 tournament. You just bring your team and you go play at Rutger Park and go to town. That'd be pretty awesome. I'd be in for that.
Yeah, there'd be some one-sided matchups for sure, but no, with soccer, I mean, it's a lot of skill and athleticism, but really, there, in theory, you could put out your best 11 guys and have them compete with the best 11 of a team from the East Coast or a professional team or a high USL division team. BYU soccer is coming off a really good year last year. You mentioned the fact that they're unique. Well, they're a college team, but they don't play in NCAA. Basically, they pay their own way to join a professional league, the Premier Development League of the USL, and they are the only team like that in that league. So they're talking about college kids, non-scholarship college kids, who are paying their own way to go to school and playing soccer in their spare time, going out and competing with teams like, the Las Vegas Mobsters, the Fresno Fuego, teams like that are basically professional guys, older guys, 27, 28 years old, who are getting money to play, and guys who are currently playing at Division I soccer programs or have played at Division I soccer programs. So BYU actually made the PDL playoffs last year, and by that virtue, they got invited to this Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup, and it's great to see the Cougars in it. I think they've got a great shot to win their opening match next Wednesday at Southfield in Provo.
Yeah. So for their first matchup, they won the coin toss, which meant, or in that particular coin toss, where they get to host the game. Brett, who was it again that they were playing?
They'll be playing the Harpo's FC. They
Harpo's
went
FC.
ahead and played in the preliminary round and defeated KC Athletics 2-0. And so May 13th, they will travel to Provo from, I believe they're based in Boulder, Colorado.
That's correct.
And they'll travel to Provo and play the Cougars.
This is an interesting matchup, guys. The Harpo's FC is a club team out of Boulder, and they're sponsored by a local brewery. And if you go to their website, it looks like they're just a bunch of friends who maybe played some soccer, years ago in high school or at the club level, and they all get together and go out and play, and apparently they're pretty good. They have some talent, and then they like to crack open a few beers after the game. I don't know how that's going to go over on BYU's campus, but I mean they're coming from a much lower level. That's the reason they had to play a play-in game. Is they're coming from something called the USSSA, which is the United States Specialty Sports Association. So we're talking about a huge drop-off in talent level and level of competition of even coming up to the PDL, which the BYU competes in.
Yeah, and that USSSA it's the sports governing body, but they kind of more or less deal with like slow pitch softball than anything. So you're not sure what kind of
that should tell you
athletes you're getting from Harpo's FC.
Well, interesting fact, guys. I looked it up. Harpo's is a sports grill in Boulder. So these are a bunch of guys that go and hang out and eat burgers and drink beers and watch sports on the big screen together. And on the weekends, they go out and they play soccer for laughs. So that kind of tells you what kind of organization that BYU is going to be facing on Wednesday, May 13th. That's why I think a team that is coached by Chris Watkins, that practices on a consistent level, that has the access to the facilities at BYU, should be head and shoulders above a team of a bunch of guys from the local bar in Boulder. So I think BYU wins handily and advances, and then it should be an interesting matchup when they take on the Colorado Springs Sidewinders, which is another USL pro team. That would be the following Wednesday on May 20th.
Yeah, and it's a team that Real Monarchs has played a few times and
lost 4 times.
Yeah, and BYU they have a healthy relationship with the RSL front office. They've played a bunch of friendlies with them, so you know they're probably getting a little tips and everything from them about how this team likes to play, and so it's setting up nice kind of for BYU already.
Yeah, absolutely. BYU, a team I got a chance to cover last year. I was the play-by-play voice of their broadcast, and I didn't have a whole lot of knowledge of BYU soccer. I was amazed at what these guys were able to go out and do, considering that they are non-scholarship players. Several key guys are back. Of course, several guys are gone. The seniors like Scott Heaton, Brian Hale have graduated from BYU. Their eligibility is up, and then maybe the best player on the team, Blake Frischnecht, is not with them because he's serving an LDS church mission in Argentina. He just left last week, and that guy was a sensation. I don't know if you've seen any of the highlight videos of the guy they call Frishy Fresh, but he lit it up. I mean, he surprised the Premier Development League. Nobody knew much about him coming out of high school in the Las Vegas area, and coming in as a true freshman. He's a tall kid, redheaded kid, sticks out like a sore thumb in the middle of the field, but really an aggressive striker, has a knack of finding space, and when he gets the ball on his foot in the right situation, he certainly knows how to finish. I think he had 4 goals in the Cougars' first 5 matches last year. He was player of the week in the PDL, I think, for the second week of the season when he had 2 goals. And then other teams, as they got the tape and the scouting reports, started to try to figure out how to slow him down, how to keep the ball away from him more. And that's when you saw Winston Sorhates really take over the scoring load for BYU towards the end of the season as they made that playoff push.
I've always been really impressed, the times that RSL has played BYU in friendlies and whatnot, the quality that the Cougars have had, and I know the players change every year as the kids go through school and whatnot, but they've always done really well against RSL in the friendlies, and so I'm looking forward to seeing how they do running through the Open Cup and for their PDL season, which is going to be starting here next week. Is that right? Or the week after?
I believe so. Yeah, they usually get started about this time of the year and go through about the beginning of July with the PDL season, and they usually have the playoffs around the first or second week into July, and maybe it stretches out toward the end of July as well. So they'll get going with their regular PDL schedule soon. I'll tell you the reason why I think they're able to compete with what some would say inferior talent on the field is because of the head coach, Chris Watkins. I mean, I have the utmost respect for him and the job he and his staff do. And I think you kind of see that in the system and the way these guys play. They might not win every single time out, but they are going to give you an honest effort, and they're going to have a chance. They're going to be in it right toward the end. Some of the matches they lost last year in PDL play just happened because of a lapse of concentration late in the match. And I know it drove Coach Watkins crazy. It was kind of frustrating as fans to watch them let a result get away because they would play a really solid 92, 93 minutes, and then they would just, screw up, to put it mildly, for a 20-second span, and that would cost them the result. So, and I think that's to be expected when you're playing with 19, 20, 21-year-old kids who are non-scholarship players. But I was really impressed with what they were able to do last year, again against much older, more experienced and highly regarded competition.
Yeah, how has BYU soccer kind of dealt with moving from NCAA to the PDL league? I know when they were in the NCAA, they had a lot of success. Won a bunch of championships. They switched over. I don't know, about a decade ago, I guess, to PDL. And I guess how has that change been? Are they pleased with that? Do they have any regrets, or is it all positive?
I think it works out really well for them for what they're trying to do, and of course, their premier objective is to have kids get a good education and a good college experience and a good spiritual experience, rather than become a factory for soccer players. So I think that lines up well with the PDL, and they pay their own way. They travel in vans long distances, making the trips down to Tucson and Vegas and Fresno, places like that. But I think it works out well with them, and a lot of it is due to, I think, is the NCAA's age limit. The NCAA Division I athletes can't play past a certain age. And of course at BYU you have a lot of returned missionaries, guys who are a little bit older, maybe non-traditional career path when it comes to college and stuff. And I think the PDL fits in a lot better, with that. They have to be enrolled in school, they have to be full-time students, but it doesn't matter if they're 24, 25 years old, something like that. In the PDL, they're not subject to those NCAA rules.
Have you found that many of the teams, do they take BYU lightly being kind of the only college program? I know you have some MLS clubs have their U23 teams, Portland, Seattle. They have U23 teams there. Do people kind of look down on BYU being kind of like college team, or has BYU earned their respect?
I think BYU has earned their respect, and if they do look down on BYU, they do it at their own peril, because there are some really, really good players in that program, and you can see it immediately after the open kickoff. Now, some of these teams that we saw come into Southfield last year, and it was really my first year being involved with the BYU program, you would see older guys, experienced guys. Some of these guys had international experience, playing in places like Argentina, Brazil, Spain, and Germany. A lot of these guys were at top-level NCAA programs, so it was kind of like a college all-star team coming in, wearing a PDL kit. And BYU certainly held their own. Won a lot of these games. They started off undefeated, I believe, their first 7 matches last year, and made some noise. They were at the top of the Mountain Division in the PDL, and if they didn't have everybody's respect before that, they certainly did then. And making the playoffs was a huge step, getting into that PDL postseason last year.
So what's the goal? Oh, sorry, Brett, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, Rick, the way that the PDL is set up with the tournament and stuff like that, do you think that, win and you're out, win and you go on losing your out mentality, do you think that's going to play in a factor into BYU? Say they do get through Harpo's FC like we all think they are, do you think mentality is going to help them when they play on, higher level talent like the Colorado Springs Switchbacks that's never been in a do or die situation?
Yeah, I think so. I think the problem is going to be, we saw it last season that BYU was a different team at home at Southfield than they were on the road. And I think that's true for most soccer clubs, and in fact most sports teams in general. But the difference was really pronounced when you saw BYU when they would play a team at home and defeat them handily. Get like a 3-1 victory or a 4-2 victory, something like that. Then they would go on the road and play the same team 2 weeks later, and they would lose 2-0 or lose 3-1. And home field, and the comfort level makes all the difference, especially when you're talking about players that young that don't have a whole lot of experience traveling, going on the road, staying in hotels, changing in a different locker room, warming up on a different field, stuff like that. It seemed like BYU was really affected by that, and I would wonder about their chances of success having to go on the road to Colorado Springs. I don't know what their atmosphere is like there, being a new team in the USL. I'm sure they have some fans there. They have some support. And those guys are paid professionals. And they're going to be much higher talent level than you're going to see man for man at BYU. So I think BYU wins the first game against Harpo's, the beer guys, but they're going to have a hard time going and getting a victory on the road in Colorado Springs. I would be very impressed if they were able to knock off the Sidewinders. And if they do that, then everybody, not just around Utah and Colorado, but I think all over the country is going to sit up and take notice and be like, hey, what BYU, how are they in this and what are they doing? And, how did they pull off this victory in advance?
Yeah.
Just keep you a few more minutes, Rick. We really appreciate your time. We know how valuable that is. Still at the newsroom, working away. One last question for me is, what do you think the goal is this season? Where they made the playoffs last season. What is the goal, or what would BYU consider to be a successful year this year? I mean, does the Open Cup factor into that at all? Do they need to make the playoffs or go farther in the playoffs, or what is the goal, do you think?
Sure. I can't speak for Chris Watkins or the assistant coaches or the players. I think the next logical step would be win a U.S. Open Cup match, which I think they have a great chance of doing, as I've said. I think advancing in the PDL playoffs. They've already made it to the playoffs. They lost to the Ventura County Fusion down in Las Vegas last year. I think they know what it takes to play through the regular season, qualify for the playoffs. I think the next step is winning a playoff match or two and advancing deeper into these PDL playoffs. And, looking at the roster, they certainly have the talent and the experience to do that, but I'm seeing a whole lot of new faces there, and I just don't know how these kids are going to come together and factor in. Of course, there are a lot of new faces last year, and it along with a handful of seniors, and it worked out pretty well for them. But, there's going to be that core of returning experience, Garrett G., Pedro Vasconcelos, Ethan Meyer, guys like that, of course, Winston Sorehates. But then you're going to have these new guys who are able to step on the field and contribute something right from day one, because the veteran guys, the returners, can't do it all themselves.
Rick, the only question I got for you, going into PDL and into this U.S. Open Cup, give us 2 or 3 guys that we should keep an eye on that might be the difference makers in these situations when it comes to their league or this Open Cup.
The goalkeeper is always critical. They've got Jake Peterson, the kid from Roy. Now, last year, he split time with Brian Hale, the senior. In fact, I don't know how they worked this out, but they alternated matches. So it would be Peterson in goal one game. It would be Hale in the pipes for the next game. And they just alternated throughout the season. And I think Coach Watkins thought that they had both earned the right for equal playing time. I'm not sure what his approach is now, because he's got Peterson back, who was really, really good in long stretches of last year, and I think has earned the right to be the full-time starter, like you would see like a typical team that has a number one keeper. But there are also 3 other keepers on the roster, and I don't know how much playing time they're going to get from Coach Watkins. So look at the goalkeeping situation. As you guys know, that makes all the difference. The 10 guys in front of them can play lights out, but if your goalkeeper isn't on a particular night, especially in a one-and-done situation, you're going to be packing the bags and coming home pretty soon. The other guy I would say is Winston Sorhates, out of Pleasant Grove, came on like gangbusters last year. Speedy guy, the type of guy that can really just light a spark, and he just nonstop Energizer Bunny. I mean, you see throughout the flow of a game where guys have bursts of speed and energy, and then will kind of pull back on the accelerator and kind of take it easy, conserve some energy. Not Sorhates. Sorhates just puts it to the floor and just goes, and you think he's going to burn out. There's no way he's going to be able to play 90 minutes plus like that. But you see him do it, and it's just amazing, the energy, the drive, the pace that he brings to the game. Always dangerous. I mean, you play a long ball to Sorhates, and he's going to get on the end of it, and most likely he is going to create an opportunity for himself or for a teammate. So I think you look at those two guys and a bunch of other key players too. As I mentioned, Garrett G., probably the only millionaire playing for a club team at the PDL level, probably in the USL level, factor in all the pros. That guy has his own tech business, scanning codes. I did a story on him for ABC4 News. He was one of the pioneers of this tech, of this QR codes, these quick read codes, created his own company in Provo and made millions of dollars on it. So, and even with that background, he could, devote all of his time to his business and his family, but he still loves soccer so much that he's coming back and he's playing again for the Cougars and devoting a lot of time and energy to something he's not making any money at, even though he's a millionaire running around out there on the field.
That's awesome.
That's an amazing story. Yeah, well, we really look forward to watching BYU soccer this season, both in the PDL and they're running the Open Cup, and hopefully it lasts a long time. Hopefully they go far enough where maybe they can play one of the other Utah teams, the Monarchs or Real Salt Lake. So we really appreciate your time. If anyone listening, if you want to go check out the Cougars, they play down, at the South Field there on the BYU campus, and I'm sure they would love having, anyone's support down there.
Yeah, let me say this, guys. They actually have a great atmosphere there at South Field, and tickets aren't very much. I think they're like $5 or $6, but it really is a good evening of entertainment. They do a great job putting on a show for the fans. Last year, their 4th of July game, if you haven't seen it, go to BYUsoccer.com. They have an aerial drone video they took, and the stands were packed. Of course, people were there for the soccer game and also to see the fireworks from Stadium of Fire. But that was like a big-time atmosphere. I forget what the crowd was, but it had to be like 4,000 or 5,000 people there watching BYU soccer, just going nuts at every touch of the ball. It was really cool. So, guys, I appreciate you having me on the Touchline podcast, and you guys can check me out on the Jocularity Show, which is my podcast I do, jocularity.show.com, and follow me on Twitter, @RickAaron.
Yeah, we really appreciate you joining us again, Rick, and thanks for your time. And we look forward to having you on again sometime. It was a really great time having you. Thanks a lot.
Anytime, guys. I'd love to come on and talk more soccer with you. Thanks.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Brett. See ya.